This is Leaders in the Trenches, and your host today is Gene Hammett.
Hi, my name is Gene Hammett. I'm the host of Leaders in the Trenches. My question for you today is about Google. Are you really in tune with how Google is representing your website so that you are seen as an expert and authority in the marketplace you're in? Well, this is a very special episode and interview we have today because I don't talk about marketing as much as I used to, but if you're a hyper-growth company, if you want to really become a leader in your category, you want to be seen as the trusted source for this. And Google actually is looking at that. Yep, they have gone beyond just looking at your content. They've gone beyond just looking at links coming in. They're actually looking at you, the author, the personal brand behind the author, and seeing how trustworthy you are. Now, today we talk about this with Phil Singleton. Phil is an expert with SEO. He's with Kansas City website design. We're going to really talk about how you can really focus your content marketing strategy so that it really pays off in this new era of Google placements and Google search. Today, that interview will help you understand exactly what you need to pay attention to. There were 3 or 4 things that were very specific that we talked about, and I won't tease you to what they are, but I will tell you it can be a game changer, if you will. I've noticed within my own work over the last 4 months of being more of an authority, getting my social signals out in the right place, I've seen a dramatic increase in the actual impact my website's getting, the traffic's growing, the podcast is growing, everything is kind of up and to the right. So it's really exciting to be able to share the results behind this, but I didn't really know what I was doing other than getting a little guidance from my team. But now I want to talk to Phil about it so it could help you grow your business. All right, here's the interview with Phil Singleton.
Hey, Phil, how are you?
Great. How you doing, Gene?
Well, thanks for being here at Leaders in the Trenches. We have a very special interview coming up. It's going to be a little bit different than normal, but that's okay because it's all about growth. It's all about you. It's all about your business. And Phil, tell us about you and who you serve.
Basically work with small businesses, mostly here in Kansas City in the Midwest, but in the last year or so, we've gotten clients kind of all over the country. I'm like the poster boy for if he can do it, anybody can do it. I went to school for finance, basically got a D in computer science. And here I am about 20 years later, running a thriving digital agency. So I do feel like, I'm the type of guy who I didn't grow up with like some of these folks did with, digital natives, right? The guys that are coming out of school that are, they know Photoshop, they know how to code. I totally learned from the outside in. I built my first website when I was 35 years old. It was ugly. It was a Microsoft front page. So I kind of learned almost as a second career. But yeah, I started out in finance. And again, I kind of learned from the outside in and learned enough web design and SEO really to build a business around it and help other people grow their businesses.
Well, I've had, hundreds of interviews with people in the marketing world. I've been shifting my focus toward leadership and culture for hypergrowth mainly because my clients were growing so fast. They were hitting capacity, and that's a good problem to have. But as a coach and an advisor, you don't want to get fired. But we're going to go back to marketing today. We're going to go back to this because there's some things going on that I feel like a lot of people aren't talking about that could really help you in your business and growth. So Phil is my guest for that. Phil, here's the question. We talked initially about SEO. I know we don't really need to explain SEO, but can you give us just 10 seconds on it?
Yeah, I think the traditional definition, I think still the way people think of it today is I type something in the search engine. We talk about search engine, we're talking about Google. And what SEO does is it helps you or your website or your web page pop up on the first page or towards the top. And I think that's the way people thought about SEO and the way they still think of it today. But I think what's really become really interesting is that search engines and search engine optimization used to be really just about 2 things, working on your website and trying to figure out ways to improve it or game the system to try and rank better. That was 50% of it. And the other 50% of it was doing things off of your website, namely getting third-party backlinks to point back to it. And, for 15 years, that's what moved the needle. And there was this cat and mouse game with SEO folks and Google. People tried to look for loopholes. Google tried to close them. And that's kind of what dominated SEO for a long time. But about 6 or 7 years ago, Google basically really changed the game. They changed their algorithms. They made the way that they rank and rate websites more punitive in nature, meaning they went after folks that were doing some of these things manipulative. They actually penalized websites, and you saw people just kind of fall off. And 6 or 7 years ago, this has kind of been the trend. It really changed the game because Google for a long time said content was king, but those of us in SEO would snicker and be like, okay, but we know backlinks and on-page tactics are what moved the needle. But when they made those real changes 7 years ago, it really changed behavior, brought a lot of offshore spammy stuff back onshore. And to me, that's when Google almost became more, they were able to start looking at so many things that were outside of those two traditional measures, looking at content. Yes, content is king now. They really meant it. Social media signals, online reputation management, and it's just gotten so deep now. They're able to go out in so many places on the internet and figure out things about you and the people that run the companies and create content on these websites. That's how they're getting out and actually ranking content right now. So it's totally changed. It's become much more holistic. In fact, if you start looking at the things that help you move the needle in SEO right now, it starts to look like good, strategic, holistic digital marketing. And what's fascinating, we were talking about, Gene, before the show started, is they've got this AI technology, I think, now that can go out and find so much more information that, to me, Google's almost become a marketing KPI. It's less about just that I typed something in, I saw something on a white screen, and more about, if you're ranking right now, it really is a signal that you're doing lots of things right on your website in terms of creating content and actually building your own personal branding and authority in terms of the folks that are creating that content.
Well, the reason I wanted to have you on the show is because, as I just showed Phil, some of the work I've been doing to get the podcast to grow is in this area, but I did it not knowing that Google was looking for it. I just thought it was smart.
Ahead of the curve, as usual.
Well, I just, I'll be honest with the audience here because, if you've been listening for a long time, I've been, pretty stagnant up until about March of this year. So for more than 3 years, it just was what it was. And I loved doing the show, but I started looking at how could I get and reach more people. I loved the interviews. And so I created more content, not new content, but repurposing old content into the right channels and creating it in such a way that drives back to my home base, which is my website.
Yes.
So let's just talk for a second here before we dive into the nitty gritty of this. A smart content strategy for any company that wants attention right now. What do you think the core elements of that are, Phil?
I still think, to me, I'm going to bring it kind of back to the real fundamental level, and that is, we all know in marketing that understanding who your ideal client is very important. I don't think that you can ever truly know who your ideal client is in the market unless you know how they search for things online. Because to me, Google has become a monopoly, and it's really become part of the purchase process. Now, it doesn't really matter what it is that we do. If we're going to have an interview for somebody for a new job, buy a big ticket item, or really buy anything. You can't even go to like Best Buy anymore without somebody Googling the product in front of them on the shelf, right? It's just become kind of part of the purchase process. Well, you can't really truly know, I believe, you can't really truly know who your ideal client is unless you know how they search for things in that purchase process. And the best way to do that is still to do really good and thorough keyword research, right? Yeah. Knowing how your ideal clients search for your products and services and the types of solutions that they're looking to, the problems that they're searching for on the internet is so key for so many reasons. And first being, if you're going to do any type of content, you mentioned this earlier, Gene, and this is a really key point because it was kind of subtle. You said your home base as your website. And I think so many people still think of their website as kind of a digital brochure. And if they're going to do anything and invest in any type of content, they tend to put them on third-party platforms with no link back to their website. You should be investing and publishing on your website, because that's what really Google wants you to be these days, a publisher, and they want your website to be the publishing platform, and they want it to be the referral source for all of your content. So when people go out and they post their best content up on, say, Facebook or LinkedIn, where it's got a 6 hour shelf life. That's it. It kind of passes through that river and it's gone. It never gets indexed anywhere online where it can be searched. It kind of flows to the water. A tweet lasts about 30 minutes, I think, is the shelf life. But if we're using that information, we're publishing from our website and then linking back out to it, we're forcing people to come back to it. A lot of magical things happen, right? Social media signal, a link from a social media a website, a place where you can pixel somebody and follow them and offer a call to action. So all these magical things kind of happen when it's back on your site. A lot of folks don't do this, but you can't structure your website, structure your content, I think, in a way that allows you to 10x things unless you do that keyword research. Because once you know how people are searching for things, then you're able to bake that into the DNA of your website. You're able to actually figure out, do I need certain pages? What's my content calendar look like? You mentioned doing things in a way that you can repurpose things. Well, a great strategy, I think, for everybody is to do your keyword research, fix your website, bake them into all the right places on the existing pages. But when we do things for our clients right now, in terms of like creating content, blogging is still a really important piece of this because it helps grow your website out organically. And again, it's a way you can share things out in pieces and come back. But we like to do that keyword research in a way that we're going to create a blog series, 10 to 15 blog posts, right? Based on keyword research. We do it in a way that's actually structured like a table of contents. So at the end of that 10 or 15 week period, we can stitch them together into an ebook, use them as a call to action, share out. Then we take that ebook out, we make the clients that we have, the people that are running the companies, the leaders, we turn them into authors. We post them up on Amazon. We create real books. We then use that book to do a podcast guesting campaign where now they can kind of build their own personal branding and authority and do some of the work to bring links to their website. Well, if you just do 10 or 15 blog posts in a row, because people say, do more content, you can't do that follow on, repurposing strategically in a way that's going to help you, do a campaign like that. But it all really, to me, comes back to that keyword research because none of it really makes any sense unless, again, you know how people are searching. And you don't want to create any of this content for the search engines. But if you're a thought leader, you're trying to become a thought leader, there's all sorts of ways that you can get your creative ideas out there, but still merge in what people are searching for into your own, in a way that you can benefit on both things. So we don't want to create content for the search engines. We never want to create content without the search activity in mind, if that makes sense. Yeah. You've always kind of got it in your back, and you can really, really get tons of organic traffic if you know the way people search for your products and services.
Well, Phil, one of the things that I want to dive into here, now that we've set the foundation here about what is SEO and what is content marketing, is there's been a new change. I don't know how recent this new change is. I don't know if it has some kind of animal name attached to it or not, but I'll let you tell us about what this new change is. But for the layman's terms, as far as what I know, it's Google's not only looking at the content, but they're also looking at the level of trust at which you have in your market. Yes. They're looking at the authority. They're looking at it, and I don't know what the specific things are, Phil. Maybe you can shine a light on those. But it really is about, can we trust the person who wrote this or produced this, and should we be ranking that higher than others that aren't as trustworthy? Is that about right?
Yes, and this is my very favorite topic because one of the top secret things it's like an open secret, and people don't talk about that much, is Google has an army of 15,000 quality raters, get $10 to $15, maybe $20 an hour to manually check search results all day long. So all they do is check search results. Is it a quality result? Report back to Google. Google doesn't use this to actually rank websites directly. They use it indirectly to make changes to their algorithm over time. So what's really interesting about this is that there's a document called the Google Quality Raters Guidelines. It's 160 pages. It used to be top secret up until about 2 years ago. They released it to the public. And you can just literally do this. You can literally do a Google search for Google Search Quality Rater Guidelines. And the first thing that pops up is a link to a PDF. That's this document that they update all the time. They just updated it again about 3-4 weeks ago that prefaced this big update, Gene, that you had just mentioned that's really been a game changer. And inside of this document, I think everybody should read it because it's really, to me, when I first read it, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like having the answers to the test. Like you shouldn't be looking at it type of thing, because Google goes into great detail in explaining to the quality raters. And again, these people they're hourly workers. They're not rocket scientists. They're just regular people. So it's written in a way that people can understand. But
so
they go through.
What are those things, Phil? I want to.
This is exactly. So they go through the one thing that they hammer, and this is actually becoming something that the search engine community is talking about a lot recently, is something called EAT. And you see this in there dozens of times. and it's expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. And if you read through the document, even if you read through the first 20 pages, I mean, you just see this acronym or abbreviation over and over again, so you know they're really trying to beat it in. And then they give you specific examples. There's one thing to say, oh, we want to see more expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. Well, what does that really mean in terms of a website? Well, they really start breaking it down, and like practically speaking, what does that mean? It means you got to see a phone number, you want to see an address, you want to see testimonials on the website. You have to know who authored it. They want to see reviews in key places. They want to know who authored each page of the website. So you should be able to look on a website and know who authored that particular page that you're reading. And there's about 20, 25 different elements that they go into, but they mention a satisfactory amount of MC, which is main content. So they're basically telling you, hey, thin pages with little content that are meant to like rank for just words aren't going to cut it. They like to see more authoritative guide style written posts and things like that. And they really kind of break it down. And there's really things that are a little bit more indirect in terms of they're basically telling you, hey, man, you need, in order to build the authority on your website, you need to be blogging, you need to be a content publisher, you need to be educating. That's how you build the EAT on your website. And one of the things they came back to that was really interesting, because again, it preceded this update, which some are calling the biggest one in the last 12 years. And they're calling it, the nickname for it is not an animal, it's called the Medic update. I think it should be called the EAT update, but it's actually been called the Medic update because it's affected so many health websites that it's almost been like, people are basically screaming bloody murder. And part of this, again, is driven because of all the things that have happened over this last year with, the internet was already not very trustworthy because of the way it was. And then we had the election and hacking. And so things that have happened over the last year have made the internet less trustworthy. So Google really doubled down and said, man, we really got to own this, the trustworthiness factor. And it's all about the quality of the website and the people that are writing. So what ended up happening is they made these changes. They published and they told us in the SEO community that the quality rater guidelines has changed. And there's a great analysis of this by this lady, Jennifer Slegg, on sempost.com, where she basically analyzes the changes from the last version of the quality rater guidelines to this one. And there's one that I'd love to show you because it pinpoints some of the things where they start to talk about, wow, here's where Google's actually changed some important verbiage about, they don't want you to just know like the quality and who wrote the post. They actually want you to dig deeper. And once you understand who wrote the post, they basically want you to look into that person who wrote it and check out their leadership level, their authority, their trust around the internet. Where have they been published? Where's their name about? Are they published in different places? Are there reviews and testimonials about that person? And that person's trust and credibility now is being attached to that piece of content. And Google wants to use that information to rank content. And I believe they can do this now because they've got something called Rank Brain that's supposedly, it's the third most important ranking factor that they have. And essentially is their AI technology, right? So I think they have the ability from a technology standpoint to go onto a website, find who wrote it at the bottom of the page and do a quick analysis about the author and then use that to rank the page. So that's really important now for us to be saying, hey, in the internet these days, in order for us to be able to help us rank our content so people can find it, we have to be working on our own personal branding and authority and getting our message out there and getting it placed and get published on high authority websites, get booked on podcasts, make sure that we're publishing on our website and start creating like our own digital persona out there in a way that can be crawled by Google and then attached to the other types of content that we're writing around the internet. And it's pretty explicitly written in this document, but I think it's really interesting in that they made this announcement to the SEO community about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and then 2 weeks ago, they just dropped this algorithmic bomb some people it didn't affect as many as others, but there are some key industries. And one of the things that's in that document is called the YMYL site, Your Money or Your Life, where they believe the trust really has to be high. And, you really have to make sure that they deliver high quality search results. It impacted those the highest. And I think this is a real game changer. I think for folks like me that have been out there trying to even write my own books and get out there, and I knew this was coming, I think it's here now, and I think it affects every company level. I don't care if you're a landscaper or you run a $1 billion, $50 billion company. They're going to be looking into this kind of stuff, and they're going to start rating the content that's on the sites you're associated with the type of expertise, authority, and trust that you're able to prove basically on the internet.
Phil, when you were talking about this, my mind goes to practical and actionable. So I want to challenge you a little bit. If you said 20 or 25 factors that go into this expertise, authority, and trustworthiness, what would be 3 things that we could focus on that you feel like are most important for us to raise that level for Google?
I think there's 2 things. One, and I want to talk about what's on the website and maybe break them out into 2 areas. But the first thing really is to look at your website. And I think most people still, when they put their websites out there, they're promoting information about their products and services. But when I read the first iteration of the website last year, the Quality Raters Guideline last year, I immediately went to work on my own webpage at kcwebdesigner.com. And I started to stack the deck and to make sure, having a look at myself as a quality rater, what things can I put on my homepage that I can get across to the quality rater if they were looking at my website, to prove to them that I have expertise, authority, and trust. And the things that I put on my website were my portfolio. I work for real companies. My name and my phone number are very prominent on there on every page of the website. I put the books that I wrote. I put a plugin that I authored that's been downloaded 200,000 times. I put all sorts of testimonials. In fact, I have different testimonials on every single page, every single key page of my website now. I put my Google Plus personal badge up on the website. That is my way to prove to Google that I am the author on every single one of these pages that I wrote.
Now, I will say, Phil, you're the first person who says Google Plus to me in a long time. Is that still important?
I think it is. I think Google My Business is really important, and there's some tie-in there. But I also think that when you're able to use Google Platform and Google Plus, and you're able to use the developer badge and put that script on your website that actually pulls your own face up, it's a trust signal to Google, because it shows that I own the website, because I actually put that script on my website that they've been able to verify through their own system. So is it important from a social media exposure standpoint? No. Is it a high trust factor for Google to prove that there's a person that's actually authored it? Yes, I think it's one of the highest things you could put on there. There's other things like, going HTTPS on your website, raising the security that way, mobile speed, all these other things where you're investing in the UI and things like that, I think can really make an improvement and show that it's a quality website. But when we specifically get to expertise, authority, and trust, just look at your website with fresh eyes and act. I tell people, new clients that come in, I say, hey, really what we're trying to do here is pretend like you're, in a court of law at a jury, and you're trying to prove and make a case, that you have the expertise, authority, and trustworthiness over somebody else. So you're just trying to put those provable facts up there where third parties are saying that you're, a third party review is super important versus you trying to say that you're great, right? I don't know if we talked about this, but certifications and badges, huge. Anything that, a lot of folks, especially companies, won't put their badges up there. A lot of them do, but that's a great way to say that a third party's vetted you, right? So a smaller business, BBB, any kind of a marketing certification for a marketing company, any kind of industry or association,
right.
Badge, I think is really important. So those things are key, and they're explicit. It's really funny in the Quality Raters Guidelines, in at least the last version, they actually show a badge from BBB on there. So it's like, if that's not a direct signal that you should think about joining the BBB, especially for local business, I don't know what is.
So, Phil, you said there were 2 pieces to it. One's website, and so I assume the other one's offsite. Is that right? Or
the offsite piece is you, the author, because it's really interesting in this breakdown that I'm going to send you from SEM Post, where they say, I think I haven't read this piece of it, I skimmed through it, but they basically instruct the quality raters to do secondary research on the authors. That's key. Who authored the page? Now take the extra step and Google that author. Right? So in my case, if I write a blog post on your site, on my site, or anywhere else, and my name's attached to the biography of it, and somebody does a secondary research on me, they're going to find a Wikipedia page. They're going to find an Amazon author page. They're going to find me on dozens of podcasts and things like that. They're going to find me listed on where I've contributed content to authority websites, right? To just stack the deck and things over time, where I've actually been out there, been able to put my content in trusted places. So now the algorithm, now the AI bot can go out there and do the research on me, collect that information, and give my content more points wherever it is on the internet. That's where I think everything's going right now, because that really does raise the game. Content's great, but unless you can prove the quality and the expertise of the actual author, it makes sense that they'd want to rate that higher or lower based on the expertise of the author. And a lot of folks just aren't doing this stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of people just they aren't going out and doing it. But now I think we're gonna really start seeing the payback on personal branding and holistic digital marketing when you go out there and do stuff, because they basically said, we're doing this now. That's the other piece of it. That's the deeper level. In the last quality rater guidelines, it was like, look at these things and find them on the site. Now it's like, find those things and do the research of the person who wrote it. That's key. I mean, that's a game changer.
Now, I want to wrap this up here, but I want to give you a chance to talk about social media, because I've heard this for a while. Social media signals are good for Google ratings. What are those signals, and how do we actually raise that impact for our personal brands?
I think for me, what I see, and this is anecdotally, I don't have like the Moz.com budget to go out and do these extensive studies on social media and the ranks. But in every case that we have, you got to look at it. Let's take a step back on this. Common sense wise, would it make sense that a blog post that's on a website that never gets linked, shared, or in social media, versus one that's got dozens of all sorts of sharing signals? Wouldn't Google isn't that more attractive to just us? First of all, if we see one that's been shared a lot, it makes it more attractive, right? So it makes perfect sense that Google would also want to raise content that's more popular, that gets those kind of signals. They're more than capable of doing it. They've been really shady in the last 5 or 6 years in terms of, I don't want to say shady. They've been very, they flip-flopped quite a bit on if and how they take social signals and social media traffic into consideration. I have seen personally, almost every case, when we take a blog post or piece of content, put it onto a website, and systematically share it out into social media channels, that piece of content almost always does better organically in the search results than ones that aren't. So I think a couple of things that happen. One is Google measures the fact that your site is being linked to from established social media channels that are trusted, those pages that are trusted. And secondly, they almost certainly are going to rate or try and follow the amount and quality of traffic that comes from social media onto the website and how long it stays. Again, would Google, if you went up there and asked them, they'd probably give you some answer that say, no, we don't count social media signals, but just about every SEO person out there is going to say, yes, social media signals count either directly or so strongly indirectly it might as well be considered directly. And that's kind of how I feel about it. Yeah. I'm going to take one more step on that, and that is one of the reasons I love audio content and podcasting is we know also that Google is paying very close attention to the amount of dwell time that's on a website. So the amount of time somebody comes from somewhere else, stays on a website, and how long they stay on that page is a huge quality signal from Google. So if they come from social media, and this is where podcasting is great, because one of the things that podcasting does for the host is when you come onto a website from social media, land on it, when you click that audio file and stay on it for longer than you would to read. And a lot of people do this with audio because it's easier to listen to a podcast than it is to watch a video that commands all your senses or scan through a blog post. So what ends up happening is people stay on episode pages longer. It doesn't take too many people. So the dwell time increases quite a bit, which increases the ranking potential of the page and the whole website. So this is kind of where it all kind of feeds in, right? Where you're doing this social stuff, you're sharing it, people are coming back. Doesn't take too many people clicking on an audio file to listen to 5 or 10 minutes on it, which is a huge on-page ranking signal, and all that kind of stuff fills in together. And that's how I think social media plays into SEO.
Well, Phil, thanks for being here and sharing some insights around this newest change within Google. Hopefully people were really taking notes and saying, look, maybe I need to get my website in order. Maybe I need to become more of a content publisher. Maybe I need to invest in my own personal brand a little bit. I can tell you, the audience, I've been doing this for years. That's one reason why I have a podcast, to be able to share insights like this. But just over the last 3 or 4 months, what I've done has really transformed this, and is all before I knew this was coming, but I have seen huge benefits. And so if you ever see my ads out there, if you ever see posting, make sure you hit a like on it or share, because that would really help me know that you're listening. Maybe you don't have time to engage with me, which is always open, but make sure you do that. So Phil, thanks for being here today to share this wisdom with us.
I appreciate this, Gene.
Well, you guys, I'm going to wrap this up. I'll say this: every time you think about what you're producing, make sure you're producing it for your perfect customer. It's not about reaching so many people. It's not about the breadth of this. It's about the depth and really emotionally connecting. So I say this to you because I know that if you wouldn't be listening to the end of this podcast if you weren't emotionally connected to what we're talking about today. So you want to make sure you create the same kind of opportunity for your guest. And I'll leave you with that. All right. As always, lead with courage, and I'll talk to you next time.